This is Seth Beamer, and you're listening to the Pivot Points Music Cast on Faidr. Pivot Points dissects the lives of artists at their most crucial intersections, investigating the trials of this insane career and how they are overcome. These are the stories of the crossroads that, for better or worse, shape us all into the people, friends, and musicians we're meant to be. Today marks the start of Season 3. Thanks so much for being here and for following along the journey of all of these artists. I'm excited to start a new chapter in a new season as I just moved to Nashville. And today, I'm joined by Nashville producer and songwriter Randall Kent. Randall has a lot of experience under his belt, both in the studio and on the road, and I'm excited to dive into everything he's been working on. But first, let's listen to one of his songs. From his indie project, Honoraries, this is Deep Into the Wild. Mr. Randall Kent, thanks for being here.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
Dude, yeah, I'm stoked to be here in Nashville with you.
Here you are, you made it.
We're both Colorado people, but you've been here for quite some time. Tell me about the story about, why did you come here? What are you doing?
I had been doing the Denver band thing for years and years, and through that process of touring, we had met some friends all over the country, and it just seemed like little by little we kept hearing about friends from Chicago moving to Nashville, and they were loving it, or friends from wherever, other cities, all kind of migrating to Nashville.
Yeah.
And the couple times that we had come through on tour, it just seemed like a really, like Disneyland for music. There was just music going on everywhere, just all your favorite musicians, doing the thing. So it just was enticing for a lot of different reasons. At the time, Denver was getting insanely expensive as well, and just hearing from my friends what they were paying in rent definitely was icing on the cake. And my wife and I were just ready to try something new. We both wanted to try the freelance lifestyle and work for ourselves, and it's been good to us. Yeah, we've both been able to do that.
It's funny that you say Disneyland for musicians, because I came out here in August, and whenever I would talk to people about Nashville when I went back, I was like, man, it feels like music summer camp for adults.
Yes.
Everyone's just an artist and making music and doing fun things, artsy things. So that's rad.
Yep.
So that's cool, though, that you came and you both wanted to do freelance when you got here. Were you both doing freelance before you got here, or what was that transition like? Because that's like a whole, man.
Yeah, I think we were both trying to pursue the things that we're now doing. I think moving to Nashville forced us to just take the full leap, as far as quitting our jobs back in Denver.
Yeah. What were you doing back there? I don't think I
was an optician. So I was selling glasses, making glasses, that kind of stuff. I just fell into it. I had a friend.
How do you fall into something like that? What are you talking about?
I had a good friend who worked there. His dad was one of the ophthalmologists there. And I started just kind of helping out with their merchandising, and they just ended up, it worked out. They were flexible enough to let me go on tours and come back and work. So
nice.
That was around the time that I started touring with Matt Hires. I had started working the optician gig, and I had started settling into this full-time job. And then I got the call to go on tour with Matt.
Yeah.
And we did 6 months of nonstop touring, and then went some really awesome tours. And when I came back to the full-time gig, it was just very apparent to me, I can't keep doing this job.
Wow. Yeah.
I got to change it.
You had a little taste. And you're like, no, that's the rock star life is for me.
Exactly. So it was a few months after that we moved out here to Nashville, and
nice.
Yeah, just started focusing on production and writing. And
was there ever, I'm curious, well, you said that a lot of people had been already migrating to Nashville, or a lot of friends, but I had a professor once who said every musician touches at least one of three cities in their life, and that's LA, New York, or Nashville.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider one of the others, or was it always just Nash?
I have family in Southern California, so LA could have made sense, but it just seemed easier here in Nashville, just financially, just a kind of easier lifestyle, I guess, probably just suited
Yeah.
the vibe for my wife and I a little better.
Well, and if Denver was getting expensive, then screw LA.
Exactly. No, I love LA. There's obviously, I go out there a lot for riding trips now, but
cool.
It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, Nashville just feels like home.
And when you got here, then did you still like want to keep tasting the tour life, or because now you're in the studio a lot these days? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, the first couple years of living in Nashville, I was still touring a decent bit with Matt Hires, and that was fun. I was trying to kind of juggle it all, and there were a lot of times where I would, set up the whole studio, and it, involved all my pedals, and just I felt like I was constantly having to tear it all up, tear it all down to go on tour, and then build it back up to set up the home studio again.
Yeah.
And I just started to realize that, if I write and produce a song, like that song can kind of continually work for me in whatever way, licensing or streaming. And on tour, it just feels like you can get paid for one show at a time, and you've got to be in that city on that day. And it just seemed like, I had done enough of that type of touring where I was ready to take a little break from it and just focus on making songs. I feel like I've always felt most fulfilled by being in the studio and just getting into that creative mindset.
That's
and
cool.
With touring, there's just so much downtime where you're not making music.
Were you like producing Matt Hires and producing like the bands that you were in then, or how did that start?
Yeah, I think with the heyday, my first band back in Denver, I was always, whether there was another producer involved or not, I was always like trying to take the reins.
Oh yeah.
Which was probably not always the coolest move, but I think that was just, my gut trying to figure out how to like make the sounds in my head come to life.
It's funny though, because I should just outs this too, but you're producing my stuff as well, you and Chris together. But it's funny hearing just through working with you, going back and listening to some of the heyday stuff, I hear you in it. Like I hear your production in it.
That's interesting.
So it's just funny to hear you talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should say too, Chris and you give me too much credit because y'all always send me such fully realized, amazing tracks that I feel like I'm adding some ear candy, but it's always a blast to get to be a part of those projects.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, but I think I just always had that itch to like get my hands on, whether I was, the person who had written the song, or even if I was just someone who was playing as a sideman in the band. Like I always wanted to participate in shaping the recording and the arrangement. So I just kept, through trial and error, trying to figure that out. And
what are you doing, YouTube or what are you doing? Just
making my own demos. I interned at a studio in Denver called Side 3.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of hung around the blasting room whenever they would let me, whether it was on my project or someone else's project that I knew, and just try to pick up what I could. And
yeah.
And then I did a seminar in France called Mix with the Masters with Andrew Sheps.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a pivot point, if you will, because he was one of the first like super pro mixers who was preaching the gospel of like in the box. Like he had converted all of his mixing flow to just in the computer, no external preamps or anything. And so that really opened my eyes to like, like he's mixing Adele and Hozier and all these like huge records with the same tools that I have. Obviously he's got a ton more experience, but like if I'm willing to stick it out and figure out how to, learn the same sort of workflow and learn to trust my ears. And
so is that how do you mix like that now? Are you all in the box or?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And did you just like take plugins from him that you were like, oh, I like how that worked? Or was it already stuff that you, like you said, you were already using?
A lot of that seminar was just talking about like his philosophy of why he would reach for a certain tool. And that was definitely really eye-opening. And there were a few specific things where like, yeah, I love the way that plugin sounds or that this technique sounds. But it's always evolving. Like I'm always trying to figure out the next sound that I'm chasing, so a couple months of one thing, you kind of get sick of it.
That's wild. Because I have been to your studio, and now thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, there isn't like a lot of outboard or like rack gear.
I have some outboard gear just for tracking, but once it's in the box, I can move a lot faster. I think just
Okay.
Yeah, dude.
All right, favorite plugin then, right off the bat.
Well, we were just talking about Andrew Sheps, and the big one that he was always preaching on his mix bus was the Neve 33609, and that ever since has stayed on my mix bus. It's just so like fat and warm, and mixing into it just makes everything sound so musical.
What is it, just like a preamp kind of thing?
It's a compressor, but it's got some harmonic magic to it.
All right.
You can throw it on there with no compression in it. It has a sound for sure.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you do mix with the masters. That's pretty like prestigious to get into, right? It's like you have to apply, and it's like a whole deal, right?
I don't know how it works, but I was gonna jump at the chance because it just seemed, like a perfect opportunity to learn from someone that I really looked up to.
And then you come back home, and did that just like change everything? Are you just like working on tons of projects after that, or what happens after that?
I think it changed everything in terms of inspiration and just sort of like believing that I could achieve similar results, at least in theory.
Yeah.
if given enough time and practice,
Sure.
So still working on that one, but we're getting there.
Dang, that's awesome, man.
So yeah, I think it just put a fire under me just to keep, finding people to record and mix and write with, and you never know where one collaboration might lead to something else, and that's kind of been the story in Nashville. Like a friend of a friend that you write with might turn into something down the road that really ends up being something bigger than you thought it would.
And how does songwriting play a role in your production then? Do you find yourself producing people a lot because you're songwriting with them, or do you find yourself songwriting with people a lot because you're producing them?
Both.
Yeah.
Probably a little more the former. Like I'll get introduced to somebody through a songwriting session. Our publishers will link us up or something, and I will usually put a track together, of the song that we wrote, and then they might reach back out like, oh, I loved what you did on that song we wrote. Like I've got a couple other songs that I've been trying to finish. And these days, everybody seems like they have some sort of home recording setup. So kind of the sweet spot for me has been, like you might have started something that there's magic in there.
Yeah.
But let's just pick up where you left off, whatever that is. It might be half tracked, it might be fully tracked, and let's just figure out how to take what you've got in its current form and get it to the finished product. So
Gotcha.
I feel like that's a lot of where my work has landed, trying to connect those dots.
Who are you writing with right now? Anyone? What's a project that's come up recently?
Yeah, there's a few people that I'm always working on stuff with. My buddy Reed, we have a duo called Common Heights, and a lot of our songs end up on Music Bed.
Common Heights is, when I was talking to you earlier, I was like, man, you're working on this project? Blah, blah. Common Heights was what was coming to mind.
Yeah, there's always new Common Heights stuff coming up.
Cool.
And that's Reed singing typically on that project, and he's an insane writer and piano player, keys player, so it's always a blast getting to collaborate with him. I've been writing a lot with a gal named Tabitha Meeks. She's really great. She's like a jazzy, I think she calls herself like Nashville's Nora Jones or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Kind of an Americana jazzy songstress, but she's great.
All right.
We've written some cool songs together that have found their way onto some TV spots and things like that. So,
and did you meet all these guys you were talking about, like through publishing companies and stuff? Are you like, what's the deal with that? You have deals with, like, do you have a publishing deal, or you just, they know you and they're like, hey, work with Randall?
Yeah. In the past, I've done different degrees of that. Right now it's just, kind of loose affiliations with different sync houses and publishers, where if they can think of a good fit,
that's crazy,
they'll
man.
link us together and we'll try to write something.
Just because you worked with somebody one time, and then all of a sudden that connection leads to a connection with the publishing house, and then that
Yeah.
Nashville, man.
Yeah.
What the heck?
And I mean, the writing thing is super fun. You just never know what's going to come of it. Sometimes nothing comes of it, or a song will just sit around for years and years and nobody releases it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little like gambling, like especially the sync licensing world. It feels like, well, I'm investing this day or this week into a track, and I may see nothing from it, or I may see a ton from it, financially speaking. But usually, as long as you're like maintaining a good relationship with your collaborators, like it usually ends up like I said earlier, kind of turning into something else.
When you're writing though, in that, like you're writing a song for sync or whatever, like, and you're spending that week, is there a chance that maybe that song will go on to be sung by another artist? Is that ever an option for you too? Or do you ever like pitch to other artists, or is it really just for commercial use?
Occasionally. I don't find myself in that world a whole lot. I feel like that happens a lot more these days in like the mainstream country world, which I'm not writing for a ton right now, and probably more in the, like top 40 pop world.
Sure.
More often I'm writing with the artist who's they're going to be cutting it as their song, or it's not very common for me to be writing something and we're talking about who we can pitch it to.
Well, I'm just curious if it's like another avenue to make some money, or if you don't, I don't know, maybe you're like unattached from it enough to be like, wherever this song ends up, it ends up,
I think that would be smart, probably, to be more strategic. And I know there are a lot of writers who are really strategic about that kind of thing, writing with a specific artist in mind and trying to find the connection to that artist to get them to hear it and see if they want to cut it. But
sure.
I found myself more in the world of like, let's just make a thing and try to find a home for it with TV and film. Or, if you're the artist in the room, like, if you want to release it, let's figure out a way to have you release it.
Well, how do you then, like for me, when I'm writing a song, a lot of times the words and the things that I'm writing about, I can't help but write about it. So when you're like writing for sync, or you're writing a song that's like, well, let's just see what we can create, where do you draw from to get those words and get those, or even the chords or the whole piece? Where do you draw from to make that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes from all over. I think a lot of times, like the best writes in those collaborators that, that I keep coming back to are the ones that we just like are having a good conversation when they come to the studio, and we're usually talking about something and that's kind of in the back of our heads. And then, as we start working on music, a lot of times those earlier topics kind of find their way back into the song. So it probably is something that is sort of on our mind or on our hearts. But sometimes it's like, hey, I think this could work in a ad or something, and it's a little more
like kitschy,
formulaic or something. And I feel like there's a time and place for both. I wouldn't want to do the formula driven writing every day of the week by any means, but sometimes there's a time and place for that.
What's give me like a Common Heights song that you guys like, give me a scenario that you guys were like talking about something and it ended up in a song, and I want to listen to that song. Can I throw that at you real quick?
Reed and I both have become fathers around the same time. Him a little bit before me, and we've had a lot of conversations about that. And there was a song that we wrote kind of with our daughters in mind. It's called Never on Your Own.
Oh, cool.
And that song was just sort of us talking about how wild it is to have this person and to imagine them growing up, and just wanting them to know that you'll always be there for them.
That's awesome. Well, let's listen to it. This is Never on Your Own.
Another high, another low. Above the north.
Do you draw a lot of inspiration from your daughter? Does that end up going into a lot of what you write about?
I mean, she'll definitely shoot it straight. I'll ask her, like, do you like this song, or is this a good one?
Oh, no way. Well, because how old's your daughter again?
I get some feedback from her. She's 5. She just turned 5.
Oh, she's not afraid to tell it like it is.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more real, because early on she would just dance. Like when she was 2 or 3, she would just dance to whatever I was playing in the studio, and now she's got some opinions. She'll tell you, like, I think you should turn the drums down. I think you need to change the words.
Really? Do you foresee her being musical then?
Yeah, I think so. She's really into theater and like musicals. We went to go see
That's cool.
Frozen, the Broadway musical, and that was her obsession for months and months. So I think I might be a theater dad before long.
Oh, nice. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
No.
It's funny how like Frozen has really stood the test of time through like generations of kids now.
Yeah.
Like more than probably any Disney movie.
Yeah.
My kids are still dressing up like frozen princesses. It's crazy.
I had never seen it until 2 or 3 years ago, and now I've seen it probably 200 times.
Yeah. I used to work at an elementary school in the before and after school program. And to this day, I could say I've never seen Frozen. I've never watched Frozen, but I've watched kids watch Frozen.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I don't really even know what it is, but I mean, that'd be pretty fun to someday maybe produce her demos or like help her, pick her up into the music world. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I love that idea. I've got another producer friend of mine, Jeff Duncan, who he was telling me, I think he's got a daughter who's, a young adult now, and they've been making music together and getting syncs, and it seems like a lot of fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the band life now. Do you ever want to go on the road and tour again? Is that still even in the bag for you? Or are you like, nah, I'm done with that life. I'm just producing and writing songs now.
There are definitely moments where I miss a lot about it. Like, it was a lot of fun to tour.
Yeah.
And just the camaraderie of like being with some of your closest friends. There was a lot that was really hard about it, especially when it's your own project and you know that your livelihood is riding on it. Like, that can be really stressful.
Yeah.
I'll say I probably enjoyed the tours with Matt Hires more, where I was just a bit more of a hired gun and, still taking it very seriously. And those tours were just a little more established anyway, were less DIY, where we were able to, afford a hotel room and those types of things.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed those tours a lot. And I enjoyed the DIY tours too, where it was just different seasons. Realistically speaking, it's hard to imagine doing it as much as I used to, just in the stage of life that I'm in now. And,
sure.
I think I really do just get the most satisfaction out of just tinkering in the studio and playing with sounds. And I think I was always a little too critical about the live shows, and I would always walk off the stage feeling like it didn't go the way I wanted it to.
Oh no!
I
really?
never felt like I got the high that a lot of performers do. Oh. So I don't think that I felt addicted to it the way that some people do. I liked the travel and the camaraderie and goofing off with the people in the band, but
yeah. I also, that makes me think of, I need to bring this up because there's this band in Colorado. They're called One Flew West. You know One Flew West, and they've, like, just speaking about the high, like, they've just gone after the Hometown for the Holidays competition every year, and they're always getting top 3, and they're like, it's all they can do to push through, and they just haven't won it yet. And I remember Chris Beeble, that your band, The Heyday, was the same way.
Yeah.
Where it was like, you guys just like had a great following, you're touring, you're doing the band thing, and just for whatever reason, just couldn't get that freaking win.
We were in second place, like, at least 4 or 5. I know we were in the top 3 like 4 or 5 times out of like 6 years or something.
That had to just piss you off.
It would have been nice to win, but also every time we didn't win, we're like, well, we can do it again. We can get the week's worth of airplay next year, hopefully, if we get in the top 10 or the top 3. So
yeah, that's true.
That was always the silver lining, and it was always fun to see. Like, we were always buds with whoever else was in that contest, and it was always cool to see them do their thing. And
did that band like just fizzle because you moved to Nashville, or what happened with that?
There were a couple things. I mean, I think we had just been road dogging it long enough that it was taking its toll.
Oh, okay.
And actually, after one of those hometown shows, it was blizzarding. We drove. This is another pivot point.
Yeah.
We drove back to our rehearsal space. It was super late. None of us wanted to unload our gear. And it was maybe 2 days before Christmas Eve or something like that. And the next day we got a call.
Oh no.
That all of our gear, 99% of our gear had been stolen. I think there was a drum that had fallen off the back of the trailer. And I had luckily taken my guitar home, my Telecaster, but everything else, all our amps and,
dude, that's tragic.
Yeah.
It's awful.
That definitely took the wind out of our sails, I think, at that point in time. And a couple of the guys left shortly after that. And I knew I still wanted to be writing songs and making music. So we took some time to to kind of rethink what the next iteration would be, and that became The Wild After with Chris Beeble and Jesse Spencer and Ryan Buller and eventually Tyler Rimey, which that turned into a lot of fun too. And that was the band that ended up doing the tours with Matt Hires.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I was going to ask you about that band too, because snooping on your Instagram, you can go down and it's like you made a post about like, wow, this song is finally out, or was it a record or something?
Yes.
So like, did you guys like have a bunch of stuff in the tank and you just never released it, or what? Tell me the story of this band. What happened?
Yeah, so we made a record at the Blasting Room with Chris Beeble, and we released that in 2014 or something like that. And then not long after that, we made another record. And I'm talking about what I said earlier as far as like me sort of, having control issues with production stuff.
Yeah.
We were working on another batch of songs, and I think I was learning just enough about production at that time to be kind of dangerous with working with other producers. And for whatever reason, we ended up, and people were moving at that time. We just ended up sitting on that batch of songs, and it didn't feel like we had fully realized them. And just over the next few years, I had kept tinkering with them in my studio over and over and over. And eventually, I think during COVID, I kind of had enough downtime to like completely dismantle them, start all over.
Start all over?
Not start all over, but like reimagine some things.
Yeah.
With some new production experience, and and it just felt like we were all just so ready to get to Mac, because we loved the songs and we loved the recordings and the production. I think I was just being a little precious about the final mixes and that kind of thing, which is a lesson I'm constantly learning. Like,
well, it's hard in your position where you understand it all so closely. You're so close to all of it. Whereas like for me, I feel like maybe in like the first few songs that we did together, I was like, I would get the mix back from Chris. And I'm like, no, this, like I'm nitpicking all these things. And now these days I feel like I'm a little more like, it's gonna, like, I'm working with a team for a reason. Right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, it doesn't need to be like this little thing. It's like, do I hear the bigger picture, and does that work? And cool. That's great. Take it off my plate, please.
Yeah. It's a hard balance to strike, because like the details matter, but also the most important thing is like just how does it make the listener feel? How does it make you feel? So yeah, it's a tricky balance. I'm always trying to like turn that analytical side of my brain off and listen with fresh ears.
Well, so with The Wild After, since it's like a band, it's not really a band anymore, but you finished these songs. What's the point of, or I shouldn't say what's the point of them, but like, what are those now maybe a consideration for sync, or are you bringing those into that world? Or?
Yeah, I think I've sent them to the publishers, and I think we just wanted that timestamp in our lives. I think that's one of the cool things about making music is like there's all these memories that are attached to making that record. Yeah. And it's just fun to be able to like show it to people and be able to go back and listen to it yourself, if nothing else, I don't think that any of us were going to be planning on touring it or like heavily promoting it, but it's nice to say like, here, I made this, just like, anything else you might make, some pottery in your pottery studio.
Yeah. I think that's like one of the coolest things about music for sure. Just bringing that up. It's like, a stamp of like, I left my stamp on this earth. This is me. And like, I'll die, but like someone might have my song forever and ever. That's cool.
That's also the thing that can cause us to overanalyze. I think it's just knowing that this version of it is always gonna exist as the final version, I think can psych us out sometimes.
And so after The Wild After, is it then now we're just Randall Kent, or what happens after that?
Yeah, around that time, that's right around when I moved to Nashville, I had started recording some of my own songs, sending them to Lyric House is the publisher that I worked with the most. Okay. So I was sending songs to Lyric House. They had previously gotten some placements for The Wild After. So yeah, I just kept bugging them with more songs. And eventually one of those Randall Kent songs got on NCIS, which I think was one of my first real placements that I had produced myself. Yeah. And so that kind of made me realize like, okay, like I can do this in my bedroom setup. I can do this in my home studio. Nice. As far as like create something start to finish that ends up on a TV show or on a film or whatever. So that inspired me just to double down on that sort of thing. And I just kept working with them and kept writing with people they wanted me to write with. And
at that point, though, were you sending them stuff as like, this is this song by Randall Kent? Yeah.
So a little all over the place. Like some of the songs were just like, if it got a placement, I'd have to come up with a name for the artist, or I'd have to figure out which of my artist names it's going to go under.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I'm a little better about that now, like finding a moniker and
so
an
does Randall Kent
control.
have a certain sound versus like,
honoraries
and
in my head it does. It's probably all pretty much the same to an average listener. In my head, it's more singer-songwriter stuff is Randall Kent, and the more sort of high energy indie folk is honoraries, I guess. But
and just whatever you feel, you don't write for those, you just like write, and then whichever side of the fence you think it's going to go on, you're just like, let's put it on that side.
Yeah, but as it's forming, sometimes I start to realize like, oh, this is an honorary song, or this is a Randall Kent song, or
Gotcha.
maybe it's not either, and we're gonna, like you said, like find another collaborator who might sing on it or perform on it.
I want to hear like a Randall Kent song. Have you worked on any Randall Kent songs lately? So we've heard Honoraries, we heard Common Heights.
Yeah, I haven't released many lately, but I released a few in like 2015, 2016. I'm trying to think.
Oh, this was a while ago now.
I think I released one in 2020. A lot of times I'll wait until something gets a placement, and then if it gets a placement, then I'll release it, because it seems like people might be looking for it. So
okay,
a Randall Kent song. Yeah, probably the latest one that I released in 2020. It's called. See, this is the problem. My head is always buried in what I'm producing, and I'm terrible about getting around to releasing this stuff.
So this is not released?
No, it was released.
Okay.
This song was on a promo for a show called The Good Doctor, so we released it. It's called Keep On Standing Strong.
All right, cool. And this is just through Lyric House? That's how it ended up on there?
Yes.
Awesome. What's this about? What's the inspiration behind this
I think this was loosely inspired by, this was kind of deep in the COVID days.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Lyric House might have sent out a brief. They were kind of looking for songs that were uplifting and inspiring, and like kind of about, being in the darkness and looking for the light sort of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's like an anthemic indie folk jam.
When they send you a prompt and they're like, hey, we need a song that sounds like this, how far along into the song do you get before you send it to them? And then, like, do you send them something like a little demo or a little like you and an acoustic guitar and say, what do you think? And then once they say yes, then you finish it? Or how far along do you get before completing?
That would probably be smart, but I'm not very good about that.
No.
I always feel like I hold it too close, and I want it to be fully polished before I send it out. Otherwise, I'm nervous that the idea isn't gonna. Obviously, they would get the idea, but like I always feel like I want to put my best foot forward and send them the most fully realized thing I can.
Yeah.
But there have been times where it's like, well, this lyric might be, a little simpler or something, and so it's like, yeah, and before I edit all the vocals and spend a million hours mixing it, maybe
I feel like compared to the rest of that's easy. You could like, if they come back and they're like, oh, I want a different word here, like, okay, cool, whatever. But like,
sure,
like putting together all the production, that's a big step.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson I'm learning, is incrementally, making it a collaboration with whoever you're, whether I'm producing or mixing something for someone else, relying less fully on my ears, like you were saying with your stuff too, like recognizing you're on a team. I thought that was a good way of saying it. And like, taking other people's opinions into account, I think is super.
That is probably why they
important.
like working with you, though, is they probably love saying, hey, can we get a song that sounds like this? And you send them a whole production. They're like, oh shit. Yeah. Like, dang, this guy just did it. It
can be taxing sometimes. Sometimes the the turnaround is like 48 hours or something, or 72
yeah.
hours. So there have been times where it's like you're just racing to get it finished and get it to where you want it to, and then as soon as you send it, it feels like you're just like coming down off of like being ultra wired, and you just have to like take a day off, you know.
Well, and then you're at a point where like, oh, I hope they pick it, you know. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, do you find they often do, or like what's the ratio of that?
Almost never.
Really?
Almost never when I send it in for something specific. This is just been my experience.
Sure, yeah, I'm curious.
But there's a high percentage of times where, you know, that song will end up being used for something else a couple months later or a year later. Like they'll find another home for it.
They still keep it in the tank.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Okay.
So that makes me more inclined to, you know, keep sending him stuff because
that would just have to be just debilitating, like sending them shit and then just getting told no. And you're like, bah.
It's not just a one opportunity.
Yeah.
And they're good about, you know, asking for briefs that are broad enough that could be used for lots of different things, not just some hyper specific jingle or something where could only be the one.
That's good
placement.
Yeah. I guess I was curious about that too, because I don't know if I told you about this contract. It's non-exclusive with Assemble Sounds.
Yeah.
And they have a writer's program as well, and I have a contract with them for that, where I'm a writer and they can send me a prompt, and then they would ask me to make a little demo, me and like, you know, 4 or 5 other people. We'd all send in that demo, and then if they pick you, then you would flesh the whole thing out.
Oh, okay.
I have not had that happen yet. Like they haven't even reached out yet, but I'd be curious if maybe you had similar experiences like that. But it sounds like it's more just like go fully in.
That sounds like a good way to do it, because I mean, sometimes in those scenarios, there's a demo fee where they're recognizing that you're going to be putting hours into, you know, developing this thing. So maybe if they're selecting one team to follow through on it, maybe they're, you know, just kind of see the whole thing through with you. I feel like that in those situations, you might have a higher likelihood of getting the placement, you know, if they've already like put some feedback into it.
Sure. Talk to me. I'm curious about the Brevet, just because I know them so closely, and you work with them almost exclusively, it seems. Like, or they work exclusively with you, I should say.
It's been a couple years where we've been just on a roll making tracks together. They're great guys.
It seems like maybe you have multiple artists who are becoming that for you too, who are like, they just come to you, you know?
I mean, I'm grateful for all the folks that are, you know, keeping me working. Production.
But sorry to cut you off. The Brevet, tell me about them.
Yeah, so I got a Instagram message from a friend and a fan of the heydays, Chrissy. I've known her for forever, and she's just such a champion of like indie musicians. She's so good at connecting people, and she just linked me and Eric from the Brevet up. I guess he had just moved to Nashville, and she said, hey, I think you guys should know each other. I'm sure you'd make cool stuff together. Yeah. So Eric and I got coffee and started writing songs, and going back to what I was saying before, just like helping people sort of connect the dots. He's great at coming up with ideas, and he cranks out so many productions of his own that a lot of times our setup is that he will have something 70% tracked in his home studio, and then we'll get together. And we've done songs together for the Brevet that have been from scratch as well. But a lot of times for his solo stuff and for songs that he's written with other people and songs that he started for the Brevet, it's sort of this thing where he has gotten all the ideas into the computer, and then we have to sort of figure out how to like simplify things, or, you know, just improve the mix, or, you know, what every song's different, but, you know, just I've found that role to be really comfy for me, where I can like, you know, take someone else's start and help facilitate getting it to the final product. Whether that's like a little bit of extra production, ear candy, and a mix, or getting it ready for mix if someone else is mixing it. But they're great guys, super creative, all really great players, and a really great live band.
Yeah, they are.
You played a show with them back in Denver, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yep. And I actually, back when I was playing with Wilderness, I played with them too.
Oh,
we
really?
played like a little outdoor festival thing together.
No way.
And so, yeah. But yeah, they've always been really great. Their new stuff with you though sounds really good. So heck yeah. Are they recording or tracking as a band in your space then too? Like live, or is it all multi-track, or how do you guys do that?
We've done a handful of different scenarios. There's been a few times where the whole band's come out and I think we'll usually track everything separate, but yeah, we'll track everything from scratch. Live drums and then bass. I think Ryan from Grizzfolk has played bass on their stuff a few times.
Yeah, they kind of have a rotating thing with that, don't they? With
Yeah,
their bass.
yeah. And yeah, then we just go to town on all the other stuff and guitars and vocals. And
That's cool. They do a good job of showcasing your studio in their content.
yeah, they are good about making silly videos. They always expose my. They had a series where they were making it seem like I was terribly bored of the song that we were working on.
Oh, that's funny.
And I thought, I don't know if people realize this is a joke. Like, I hope I'm not coming across as like an asshole producer.
It's because you just have such a calm demeanor, you know? That's funny.
No, they're great.
Should we listen to one of their songs?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's like your favorite production that you worked on of their, like what's a favorite song, I guess?
That's a tough one. They've got so many good ones. The one that comes to mind is Safe. That was one of the first ones that I helped out with, more on the mix side of things. So Eric had actually written this with Rob Thomas over Zoom.
Oh, dude, he was telling me about this actually. And how he was like, yeah, we're like friends now. And we talk, blah, blah. And he told me about this song. And anyways, that's crazy. Yeah.
And Matchbox 20 was one of the bands that we toured with Matt.
Oh, no way.
And so we had that little connection too, where I thought it would be cool to work on a song that Rob Thomas had a hand in. But anyway, that song was a super special song. It seems like it's connected with their audience. And I feel like I really put a lot of love and care into the mix. And I feel like that, in some ways, Eric and I had been writing some stuff, but in some ways I feel like that had kind of helped win them over as far as like trust. Like they really trusted how I was going to treat the sonic integrity or whatever you want to call it of their mixes and their productions.
Very cool.
'Cause I feel like that for whatever reason, that mix and that arrangement really came together nicely. So yeah, Safe by the Brevet.
Here's a line down the road.
Is there anything coming up that you want to help promote, or maybe an artist that you're working with right now that you want to promote who's like, is there anyone who's like on the up and coming who people don't know about that you're like, this person I'm working with?
Grizzfolk are some really great collaborators. I've written a lot of songs with Adam for his solo project and I've produced some stuff for his solo project. But yeah, they're just a great band.
Are they from here?
Adam lives here. The singer lives here in Nashville, but they're, I think, originally based in LA.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
And how did you get connected with Grizzfolk then?
I think just through a writing session. Yeah, I had someone that was setting up sessions, and we wrote a song that was on one of their previous records called Rarest of Birds. And then a couple months later, I was at a festival here in Nashville called, sort of local festival called Live on the Green, and ran into them.
Okay.
And they said, we should write another song. So they came over, we started writing another song, and they're like, you should produce this. And then that turned into producing a couple other songs for their new record.
Amazing.
So,
and so what's your hit song with them? What's your favorite?
My favorite song that we did was called Be My Yoko. They wrote it with a guy named Gabe Simon, who's an awesome writer.
Okay.
And it's just a fun song. I feel like it's got so much personality and character and just tons of retro 12-string production, like very jangly.
Be my
Yoko.
Be my Yoko Ono?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So a lot of Beatles kind of sounds then.
Yeah, a lot of John Lennon references.
Okay.
So yeah, that's super fun song to produce, and killer mix by Andrew Mari on that one. So yeah, this is one of my favorite pieces of music I've worked on
Very
in a
cool.
long time. So yeah.
Well, let's listen to it then. This
Cool.
will be it. This is Be My Yoko by Grizz Folk.
It's true, I traded out for you. Yeah, I'd throw in the towel, all my songs will.
Well, Mr. Randall Kent, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah, this was awesome. A great introduction to Nashville, and I'm glad I'm in town with you. And yeah,
Let's go get a burrito.
let's go get a burrito, dude. That's all we got, folks. Thanks so much for listening to Pivot Points. You can listen to the Pivot Points Music Cast and more on the Faidr app. My name's Seth Beamer, and I'll talk to you soon.